When Senator Cory Booker stepped into that confirmation hearing, he didn't waste a single second on pleasantries. He went straight for the jugular, forcing Pam Bondi to face the one question that millions of Americans have been asking for years: can we actually trust the Justice Department to stand with the people instead of protecting broken systems? This wasn't about political theater or sound bites. Booker's grilling was a test whether Bondi would commit to banning chokeholds, strengthening the fight against illegal guns, and holding law enforcement accountable. What followed wasn't just tense, it was revealing.
Make every day, which charge to bring, which plea deal to offer, or what sentencing recommendation it makes. It's very important that local prosecutors understand that. Given this enormous discretion our legal system gives them, that they are best determined to make decisions about public safety. I'm very concerned that many people are starting to call for a time in our country where the Department of Justice should prosecute state and local prosecutors who exercise that prosecutorial discretion. As Attorney General, will you commit to respecting the autonomy of state and local prosecutors?
Senator, we have to work together with state and local prosecutors. That's what I did my entire career. And if confirmed as Attorney General, I will continue to do that. They serve a vital function in our justice system.
And you understand, like in my state, that sometimes they will decide not to go after certain low-level offenses in order to use their scarce resources to focus on the strategy of pursuing more dangerous people.
Yes, Senator, I completely understand that.
And those decisions shouldn't be politicized if they're part of a larger public safety strategy.
No, Senator. When I was a state prosecutor, we used to sit down with the U.S. attorneys and talk about cases and work together. And that's what I'm discussing about bringing back the cooperation between state and local
Thank you, Ms.
governments.
Bondi. I just want to continue. One of the most stunning hypocrisies I've found since I've been down here in Washington is every politician gives lip service to driving down gun violence. But the very federal authority, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, that is primarily focused on enforcing America's gun laws and keeping people safe, is hamstrung by federal leaders. The ATF's core responsibility is assisting in local law enforcement. When I was a mayor, I detailed local law enforcement to the ATF, but I'm stunned at how they have been stripped of resources, of their budget, and all of their capabilities to go after illegal gun running. When I was mayor of the city of Newark, we couldn't find one gun crime that was done with a legally purchased gun. But when I turned to the ATF leader at that time told me in private, we don't have the resources, support, or legal ability to go after these crimes. I am concerned about our ability to fight gun crime in America that threatens our law enforcement officers as well as people in communities from red counties to blue cities. Will you commit to doing everything you can to making sure the ATF has its resources and the legal power to pursue illegal gun runners in our country?
Senator, I will do everything in my power to prevent illegal gun runners in our country. When I left being a state prosecutor to run for Attorney General, I almost didn't run because I was working on a wire case involving illegal gun runners.
The DOJ issued in 2022 a use of force policy for its federal law enforcement officers. It was approved by the heads of the DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and ATF, and many of them said it is actually a use of force policy that actually protects law enforcement officers as well as protects others from having their rights violated. It was also endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and NAPO, the National Association of Police Organizations. This policy is considered best practices in law enforcement. Will you commit to continuing this policy?
Senator, I have not read the policy. I will review the policy, and I will report back directly to you if I am confirmed as Attorney General, and consult with law enforcement. Absolutely.
And I would appreciate if you looked at the policy and I submit questions for the record, hoping that you can elucidate maybe more of your thoughts on this.
Certainly.
And then I will also say, as my last question, because I see my time has run out and I look forward to a second round, the DOJ issued a policy regarding chokeholds, which limited the use of no-knock warrants and chokeholds. It's worth noting that Florida has outlawed no-knock entries altogether since 1994. Would you commit to continuing the 2021 DOJ policy on these issues?
I'm familiar with the policy. I have not read it. I'm committed to reading it and studying it and reporting back to you on that policy once again.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations.
Because Bondi's answers exposed far more than she intended, and the silence between her words may end up speaking louder than anything she said, Booker began by framing the moment as a crisis of faith. He reminded everyone listening that the strength of the Constitution isn't just in its text, but in the belief people have in it. And right now that faith is cracked, maybe even broken, after years of political turmoil, partisan prosecutions, and communities watching justice applied unevenly. Booker didn't speak like someone trying to score political points. He spoke like someone who's watched too many Americans lose hope in the very system meant to protect them. His warning was clear: a Justice Department that fails to demonstrate independence, fails to heal that faith, isn't just failing its mandate, it's tearing at the fabric of democracy itself. That set the stage for the clash to come. Then came the chokehold question. This wasn't abstract, it wasn't theory, it was life and death. Booker asked directly whether Bondi would commit to continuing the federal policy banning chokeholds, a measure designed to prevent tragedies that have torn communities apart. The question was razor-sharp because it wasn't just about policy, it was about accountability. Families across the country have watched loved ones die under knees and arms, and the wound of those moments still runs deep. For communities of color, every traffic stop carries the weight of history. Booker wasn't asking whether Bondi knew the statistics. He was asking whether she had the courage to take a stand against practices that have cost lives. Bondi's response: a vague promise to review the policy. To anyone listening closely, that sounded less like leadership and more like hesitation, a signal that reform could be quietly rolled back under her watch. But Booker didn't just come to expose gaps. He also pointed to what works. And surprisingly, he offered rare praise. He brought up Craig Carpenito, the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, appointed during the Trump administration. Booker admitted he doubted Carpenito at first, even opposed his nomination, but what followed proved him wrong. Carpenito worked with local leaders, focused his energy on the most violent criminals, and built strategies that actually cut murder rates in cities like Newark. The results were undeniable: historic drops in violent crime without resorting to mass arrests or fear-mongering headlines. Booker's praise wasn't just about one man, it was a model: focus resources smartly, partner with communities, and you can reduce crime while strengthening trust. In other words, it's possible to be tough on violence without being blind to justice. The message hung in the air: would Bondi embrace that kind of strategy, or fall back into the old cycle of over-policing and under-delivering? That led into the question of prosecutorial discretion, something most Americans never think about, but that defines the justice system every single day. Local prosecutors decide which charges to bring, which cases to pursue, which plea deals to offer. Those decisions shape the entire criminal justice landscape. Booker warned against the growing calls for the Justice Department to override those local decisions. He asked Bondi directly, "Will you respect the autonomy of state and local prosecutors?" On the surface, Bondi agreed, saying cooperation was the key, not micromanagement. But for Booker, this wasn't just about respect, it was about resisting political pressure. Because once prosecutorial discretion is politicized, justice becomes a weapon, not a principle. Bondi's words sounded cooperative, but the question lingered: when push comes to shove, would she resist the temptation to politicize prosecutions, or cave to demands from those in power? From there, Booker shifted to an issue he knew personally: gun violence. As the former mayor of Newark, he lived it. He explained that nearly every gun crime in his city involved weapons that weren't purchased legally. The problem wasn't law-abiding citizens, it was illegal gun trafficking. And yet the very agency tasked with stopping that, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, was chronically underfunded, stripped of resources, and politically boxed in. Booker shared how ATF officials once told him they didn't have the tools or manpower to fight illegal gun running effectively. He pressed Bondi, would she commit to giving the ATF the backing it needs? Her answer was familiar: promises to do everything in her power. But promises in Washington can be slippery. Without real commitment, Booker warned, illegal gun runners will continue to flood communities with weapons, leaving families to deal with the fallout, while politicians argue over talking points. Then came a pivot that connected everything together, the DOJ's 2022 use of force policy. Booker reminded Bondi that this policy, approved by agencies like the FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals, wasn't radical. It was designed to protect officers and civilians alike, striking a balance between safety and accountability. It was even endorsed by police organizations, proving that reform and officer protection aren't mutually exclusive. Booker wanted to know, would Bondi uphold it, or weaken it in the name of law and order? Her response once again was to deflect, saying she hadn't read the policy, but would review it if confirmed. For communities watching, that sounded like a red flag. Because in Washington, review often translates to roll back quietly when nobody's looking. Booker wasn't done. He circled back to the issue that had anchored his line of questioning from the start: chokeholds and no-knock warrants. These aren't minor procedural debates. They are practices that have ended lives and ignited protests across the nation. Booker asked whether Bondi would commit to continuing the 2021 DOJ policy restricting both, and once again her answer was to stall, saying she'd need to study the policy and report back later. That may sound cautious to some, but to those who've spent years demanding change, it was the same old story, vague words instead of real commitments. Booker's persistence underscored the point: reforms that save lives shouldn't be optional, and any attorney general unwilling to commit to them in public sends a message all its own. By the time Booker's questioning wrapped up, the stakes were clear. This wasn't just a clash between two political figures, it was a snapshot of America's larger struggle: communities demanding safety and justice, leaders promising accountability but dodging firm commitments, and a Justice Department caught between independence and political influence. Booker highlighted both the failures and the possibilities. He showed that real strategies can reduce crime without breaking trust. He exposed the hollowness of empty promises. And he reminded everyone watching that silence and hesitation can be as telling as outright opposition. The bigger question left hanging was this: will the Department of Justice in the coming years stand firmly with communities crying out for accountability, or will it quietly slide back into old habits under the cover of technical reviews and cautious political language? Booker may not have gotten definitive answers that day, but he forced the conversation into the open, and that in itself revealed more than Bondi might have intended. So what do you think? Should the next Attorney General double down on reforms like banning chokeholds and empowering the ATF, or will Washington politics once again let those promises fade away? Drop your thoughts below, because this debate is far from over. And if you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the next story we're covering is even more controversial, and you won't want to miss it.